With regards to tonight's meeting, I'd like to remind everybody that in accordance with Council's Code of Meeting Practice, this meeting is being live streamed. The acknowledgement of country and prayer of council will be read by the CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Before we begin proceedings, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we virtually meet, and their ancestors past and present, the Cabral clan of the Darug Nation. I also acknowledge that this land was accessed by peoples of the Darug and Darug nations. The affirmation of council. We affirm our hope and dedication to the good government of our city and the well-being of all of Liverpool's residents, no matter their race or creed. Tonight, we affirm our hope for sound decision-making by council, which will improve the quality of life in our city. We express our expectations and best wishes for Australia, our nation's future, the Mayor, councillors and staff of council, and all those associated with good government in Liverpool. The prayer of council. For the God of our faith, we who are gathered at Liverpool City Council pray for the good government of our city. We pray for the well-being of all of Liverpool's residents, no matter their race, gender or creed. Tonight, we pray for sound decision-making by council, which can improve the quality of life in our city. We pray for Australia, our nation's future, for the Mayor, councillors and staff of council, and all those associated with good government in Liverpool. Amen.
Thank you. And do we have any apologies? I gather we're all here then. We don't have any condolences, but for the interest of councillors, we will have one, I believe, at the next meeting. The CEO of Fairfield's wife, unfortunately, was killed, I believe, today. She was hit by a car while exercising. Unfortunately, she died straight away after being hit by the car. It's quite tragic and quite sudden. So our condolences to Fairfield Council. And we have made, obviously, phone calls and spoken to people over there, but obviously things are very upset, as you can understand. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the 25th of March.
Yes, I'll move that way. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sheldon. Seconder?
Happy to second,
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I'll put it, those in favour, those declare it carried. Declarations of interest.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I declare two interests. First of all, in relation to Corp 02, which relates to the Liverpool and District Historical Society. I am an ordinary member of the Historical Society, hold no offices, but I will leave the virtual room and not participate in the discussion as I've done on previous occasions where matters concerning the Historical Society come up. Also, in relation to Conf 01, which relates to the Council's Audit Committee, I'm an ordinary member of the Audit Committee. I know the individuals involved only through their involvement in the Audit Committee. I'm going to call it not pecuniary, not significant, and I will not be leaving the room in relation to that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I would also like to declare an interest in Corp 02 as an ordinary member of the Liverpool and District Historical Society, and I will also leave the virtual room for that item.
Same, Corp 02, I am also an ordinary member of the Liverpool Historical Society and will virtually leave the virtual room.
Okay, thank you very much. Any others? Okay, thank you very much. There were no applications for our public forum this evening, and there's no mayoral report at this point. First item on the agenda is on page 72.
Sorry, Mayor, before you go on, we've got 3 councillors missing. Is that because they can't get on, or is it because...
Well, I did ask for apologies, councillor, and none came forward, so I said we must be all here.
Yeah.
I'll ask George. George, have we got missing people?
George is trying to get Deputy Mayor Carnib in the meeting now. He's not in the room at the moment.
Is there anybody else missing?
Councillor Balut appears to be missing as well. I'm just trying to contact him.
Councillor Blue, is Councillor Ayad there?
No, she's missing as well.
She is.
All right. Well, it is 5 minutes past 6 and we do start at 6. I'm prepared to wait a couple of minutes if people wish to do so. I'll say we'll wait till 10 past 6, not adjourning the meeting, but we'll just wait until 10 past 6 to allow the other members to join us.
Thank you, Mayor.
Right, we'll resume the meeting. The first item's on page 72.
I'll move the motion. Move the motion as it appears in the book. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shelton. Seconder?
Yeah, Councillor Haggerty.
Thank you. Is there any opposition?
Just a question, if I may, Mayor.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you. Through to the relevant officer, in relation to what's kept on our systems, I couldn't see anything in the policy. Do we actually track to see if anyone accesses that information?
I'll ask Mr. Maguire if he's able to answer that question.
Through UCO to the Mayor, and no, we don't. As far as I'm aware, we don't track who's got information apart from when it's been released to parties under normal GIPA requirements.
Okay, so I suppose through you again, Mayor, if I may, to Mr. Maguire, is then the information held on our service then accessible by anybody in the organisation, and it can't be tracked? So, for example, who can and can't get out of all these documents, who can and can't get out of emails, who can really be the big brother watching?
Through you, CEO. As far as I'm aware, within the organisation, within the council, really the overall ability to get into any documents depends. Really is a matter for the CEO. Apart from, and perhaps in certain circumstances, for the chief information officer, dependent upon the instructions that are provided to him. But there's a clear process for ensuring that people that within the system you only have access to those documents to which you're authorised to have access, and that's done through mainly through TRIM and the access controls provided by TRIM, and also the other systems that council uses.
So then, sorry, just one further question, if I may. Does TRIM then track who accesses those documents?
Yes, it does. It has an audit trail there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, declare it carried. Next item's on page 74.
Mayor, I've got a motion.
Yes, Councillor Hagan.
So, as per the book, the council receives and notes the report.
Mm-hmm.
I've also got a couple of additional points, which I'll talk to first before putting the motion. What does it? Do you want to specific order?
Yes, please. Explain. Yep.
So last Wednesday, I came aware recently that last Wednesday a pedestrian was hit and killed at Croatia Avenue in the early morning. Now, it's still under investigation. I don't think it's got anything to do with Edmondson Park, but I do know that area has been the site of numerous accidents due to cars basically being sort of all up and down Croatia Avenue. So I just wanted to put some additional stuff in here around, not so much that, but just in regards to the Edmondson Park commuter car park. So plans were put out in early April. They've closed now, but the plan is to build 1,000 new spaces, but close one of the existing car parks while they're building it with no additional car park. Now, my concern here is that that'll cause more cars earlier in the morning up Croatia Avenue. Now, I've had a look at that area. It's an unsealed road. There are no footpaths, and I think that well, my motion is that council perform the necessary road repairs and construct a safe thoroughfare along that stretch of Croatia Avenue, and that we call on the New South Wales Government to immediately fast-track construction of the commuter car park and have alternate parking arrangements in place during construction.
I'll second that, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Chitty. Is there any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, declare it carried. The next item is on page 80 and it's a procedural motion.
Move that way. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
That, Mayor.
Thank you. Any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, declare it carried. Next item is on page 83. The recommendations on page 84.
Could I just ask a question in relation to that, Madam Mayor, or effectively making a recommendation? The items there to go out on public exhibition for 28 days, I'm just querying whether it would be any skin off anyone's nose, given the current circumstances, that they go out on exhibition for a slightly longer period. It would appear to fit in with the timetable in any event that's set out on page 85 if public exhibition was for something a little bit more than the minimum 28 days. Thank you.
I'll just ask, is that a possible CEO? Is that a problem?
Let me just check with Mr. Moore. We are on a slightly compressed time frame, but I think you're right. I think we could probably extend it by a week or two and not dramatically impact on our timeline. Mr. Moore, what's your feeling on that matter?
Yes, I think we could extend it. The timeline is critical because these studies link to the LEP review, and the LEP review has funding from the New South Wales government, which has some timelines linked to it. But I'm sure we could absorb an extra couple of weeks of exhibition time there.
Motion that appears in the book with 6 weeks rather than the usual 28 days, 4 weeks. Thank you.
I'll second that motion, Madam Mayor.
I've got a couple questions as well.
Yes, Councillor Haggerty.
So I'm sure all councillors received an email today in regards to the Middleton Grange Town Centre. Now, I had a look at that, and I also went back to the study. So probably some questions for the Director of Planning. It sort of falls between a local centre and a town centre from what I can read. What was if you have a look, say, shopping centres like Council and Green Valley are classed as town centres, whereas your Cecil Hills and your Chipping Nortons are local centres. Sort of and it's got the criteria there. What was the determining factor for Middleton Grange, if you know the answer to that one?
Mr. Moore or Mr. Smith, whichever one of you would be able to answer that more comprehensively.
Yeah, Mr. Smith, if you're there, I know you've been talking to the staff about that point raised in the letter this afternoon.
Yes, thank you. Through the CEO, the actual study itself went in quite some detail, which is an attachment to this report. So the study talked about the catchment and talked about the elements that make a town centre versus a local centre. I've also spoken to the proponent this afternoon. The council report itself is very clear in that it makes it clear that whilst the strategy identifies a local centre, given that there's a concurrent planning proposal in place, that if that planning proposal is supported in its current form and it triggers a requirement to update the strategy and therefore update the LSPS, then that's what occurs. But at this stage, based on the evidence before SGS, when they prepared the documents, they identified as a local centre, but it doesn't preclude council from changing that. And we've also said to the proponent that the letter that they've submitted today will be treated as a submission if council does endorse the draft for exhibition. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, because that was my next question. How set in stone is it? And I noticed that one of the determining factors was access to public transport. And from my understanding, there's one bus route that goes past there. But if FAST went ahead and if we had additional bus routes in, would that be a condition to I guess upgrade it, so to speak, to a town centre? But I think you've sort of answered that. It's not set in stone, and it can be relatively easily changed depending on other factors.
Through the CEO on that, councillor, it's absolutely with any strategic planning documents, they need to be kept under regular review. So if decisions are made by council this year or next year or the year after that have an impact on those strategic policies, there is an allowance in the Planning Act for those strategies to be updated accordingly.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm comfortable with as per the book. Thanks.
I'll
Okay.
foreshadow a motion, Mayor.
Pardon, Councillor?
Can I foreshadow a motion?
Yes, certainly. Do you wish to speak against this motion, Councillor?
Yeah, I will on a few points. Firstly, the Middleton Grange one. And after receiving that document today, I'm in two minds in relation to that. Yes, this is going on exhibition. Yes, it can be changed. Yes to everything else. I am concerned, and I did raise these concerns in a briefing session in relation to why we are changing it, so it's not just fresh. That we would even do this without even consulting with a landowner in relation to this, given everything that's been happening. So the foreshadowed, if you allow it, or if this one doesn't get up, will be, yes, the 6 weeks to remove the changing of that, to leave it as it is, as a town centre. And I'll be also seeking to remove on page 87 of everyone's agenda, the key actions, which is develop an affordable housing contribution scheme in line with Greater Sydney's Commission requirement for 5 to 10%. So there'll be two changes. That will be leave Middleton Grange as it is, and the other one will be to remove the affordable housing contribution scheme.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers for? Okay, those who would like to vote against this motion, please make your voices heard.
Second.
Madam Mayor, can you just clarify which motion we're voting on? Are we voting on the foreshadowed?
We're on page 84 of the book.
Yeah.
EGRO 01.
So I'll vote against, Mayor.
Thank you.
Same here, Mayor. Councillor Hall.
Yep.
Madam Mayor, I'm also
Councillor
against. Thank you.
Yep. So we've got against Councillor Hachidi, Councillor Hall and Councillor Ayard, is it? And Councillor Hadid. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Everybody is still present, I'm gathering, George, are we?
Madam Mayor, I'm against the first motion as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Okay. Then the motion is defeated and the foreshadowed motion comes forward.
So the 6 weeks I don't have an issue with, and obviously changing those, removal of the develop of an affordable housing contribution scheme and leave Middleton Grange the way it is.
Okay, thank you. Any opposition? Thank you, Councillor Hadid.
Yeah, I'm in opposition to this one.
Would you like to speak against it, Councillor?
I would. Now, I just spoke on Middleton Grange, and I think it's sort of, from my reading of what's been deemed a local centre, what's been deemed a town centre, I think it's a bit of a tomato argument. So not fussed with that one. The issue I do have a problem with is the affordable housing contribution scheme. We are about to go into probably a depression, which none of us have ever been around to see. We're going to see lots of people homeless. People have never been homeless before. The way you solve homelessness is you get people into homes, and the way you build homes is you build affordable housing. So why we'd be doing this at this time is, it's just counter to what we should be doing at this particular point in time.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers for the motion? Councillor Hachidi, did you wish to speak for your motion?
No, I think it's quite clear, Mayor. That's fine. Thanks.
All right, I'm going to put the motion. Those against the motion, please speak up.
Councillor Haggerty.
Yeah, I'm against the motion as it stands. Councillor Sheldon.
Right. As am I, Councillor Calienda.
Yeah.
Councillor Carnib.
Councillor Carnib against.
Yes.
Councillor Waller against. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then there's 11 of us. The motion is carried. Thank you. Next item is on page 94. So the typist got that, I would gather, because you had to have your names listed for that particular motion. The next item is on page 94.
Madam Mayor, I have some questions, and I don't know what that noise is.
Yeah, it's my garage. Okay, go ahead with your questions.
Yes, so I see in the research paper that was provided as an attachment to the report that there are a number of suggested public education programs and responsible pet ownership alternative options. Can I ask through you what we currently have in place on that front?
CEO?
Sorry. Mr. Moore, are you able to talk about our education programs? I should stress at the moment, councillors, that many of them have been suspended due to the current climate, but we have had a range of programs in the past. Mr. Moore, can you talk to those?
Yeah, I'd like to take that on notice to give you a complete and accurate list, councillor, but we certainly run programs, sometimes in collaboration with the RSPCA and other animal welfare groups to encourage, microchipping of animals and other general pet welfare programs. They happen regularly throughout the year, but if I could, I would like to take that on notice and give you a complete list of all it is that we do there.
Sure. And the other, I guess it's less of a question, more of a request, is that I see that the research report is from 2011, and most of the studies quoted in the report are between 15 and 20 years old. Can I request that in the paper that comes back to the May meeting that we actually have some more updated studies on the efficacy of trap, neuter, release programs?
Through the CEO, certainly, yes, we'll include that information.
Thank you.
Happy to receive and note that report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Seconded.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor Caliendo. Any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, declare it carried. Next item's on page 109.
I have a question on this one, Madam Mayor.
What is your question?
The question is on page 110. The amendment to the LEP would allow advertising structures and other signage with consent in B3 commercial core and B4 mixed uses zone. The B3 and B4 zones, when they say they're located solely within the Liverpool city centre, what does that mean? Because there's other areas in the Liverpool LGA that have B4.
Mr. Moore, are you able to talk to that?
I think the report stands correct, but Mr. Smith, can you confirm if there are, if you know where the location of any other B4? It's certainly correct in as far as B3 goes. That is only in the commercial core.
Through the CEO, thanks, Tim. Yes, currently under the LEP, the only places in Liverpool that have a B3 and a B4 zone are in the Liverpool city centre. But what the report also says is that in the future, if the B4 zone expands broader than the Liverpool city centre, that those controls will apply in that area as well.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Happy
I've got
to
a
move
question.
that as is.
Hold on. Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Moving. Councillor Sheldon, what is your question?
Yeah, my question's on the foot of page 1375, the following statement appears. Council officers believe existing public community notice and public information signage, business identification signage and building identification signage allows for sufficient opportunity to promote both public and private services and events in an equitable manner. It is considered that significant visual impacts will result if third-party advertising is permitted within the Liverpool city centre. I was wondering if staff could prioritise, in other words, say that, what are the main reasons for giving a different recommendation now to the recommendation that was set out previously and is copied on page 1375. I understand things have changed in terms of LEP Amendment 52, but I'm just wondering what the priorities were in relation to the apparent change from the past to the present.
Thank you. I'll throw to Mr. Moore, but I mean, my understanding is that there has been some temporal change as well. We've gone from a smaller type of CBD, more like a town, into a CBD more like Parramatta, and with that you tend to change your acceptance of advertising. But I'll ask Mr. Moore if there's any further detail there.
Mr. Smith, I might ask you to speak to that.
Yeah, that's fine. Through the CEO, Councillor, I think what you're referring to was a report that we put up to the August council meeting where we recommended that the planning proposal itself not proceed, but at that meeting, council resolved to defer an ultimate decision on whether the planning proposal proceeds or not until the public domain master plan is finalised. Public exhibition on this planning proposal proceeds, and exhibition also of the DCP proceeds. So this recommendation here is aligned with the resolution of council from the August council meeting, 28th of August council meeting, where council resolved to continue progressing it at this stage, but defer a final decision until those three elements had been completed.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? We have a mover. Do we have a seconder?
I'm happy to second it, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Is there any opposition?
Yeah, I'm going to vote against it. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Okay, one person opposing. Any other people opposing? Your names have to be listed for this particular one. So Councillor Shelton is opposing. Everybody else, I would say, is agreeing. So for the typist, I declare it carried. The next item is on page 114.
Move that way.
Thank you, Councillor Haggerty. Second.
I'll second that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any opposition? No opposition, I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, declare it unanimous.
Yep.
For the typist. 121 is the next recommendation.
Move that way.
Thank you,
I will
Councillor
second,
Haggerty.
Madam Mayor.
Councillor Callaghan. Any opposition?
Just a question, Mayor, that relates to Section 711s.
Mm-hmm.
Just an update, if we can, from the extraordinary council meeting on the other amendment we tried to make on Section 711s. Would be grateful. Thanks.
Yes, there's a paper in your current pack, in your addendum, to look at that specific matter. Actually, I'm sorry, now I'm saying that, I didn't see it come up on the list. Councillor, it's in there? Okay, fine. Yeah, so you need to resolve that. I can't do it without a legal resolution of council to change the policy, and we put up the policy changes for you, so you can resolve that tonight, and then it goes on public exhibition.
Sorry, and I do apologise. Have I missed an addendum somewhere?
Yep.
I'm here, Councillor.
Councillor, let me just jump quickly offline for a second, because it was definitely an
EGRO 10. Yeah. If you're on the digital one, it's page 1948.
Okay, I'll try to find it, but I'm on paper copy. So,
Councillor, what I'll do is I'll just get George. Can you quickly email that to all the councillors just to make sure that they've got that on hand?
Yeah, we'll do that now. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
We'll just wait a couple of minutes on that information.
I'm fine then, Mayor. This has got nothing to do with that one. We can talk about the other one later.
Okay, all right. Thank you. There's no opposition. I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, declare it carried unanimously. The next item's on page 125.
Move that way.
I second it.
Thank you, Councillor Haggerty. Councillor Carnib. Any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, declare it carried unanimously. Next item is on page 134.
Yeah, move that one.
Move that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Seconded. Thank you, Councillor Hall. Any opposition? I'll put it unanimously. The next item's on page 139.
Madam Mayor, I've got a question on this one.
Yes, Councillor.
The question is that why does page 36, diagram 2.35, Sappho Road, Warwick Farm, show the Warwick Farm race precinct coloured dark purple, suggesting heavy residential in the the code on the map?
Mr. Smith or Mr. Moore, can you provide clarity on that, please?
I would have to take that on notice, though, noting that this report is about the city centre DCP amendment. So if there's an issue,
no, it's specifically about the Sappho Road, Warwick Farm, that particular map. So that's not the Liverpool CBD.
Thanks, Councillor. I was referring to this report is in relation to the city centre DCP. So if there's a map that's in there that hasn't been updated, I'll need to look at that and take that on notice.
So can we move the motion with an addition in it that we adopt the draft amendment 25 to the Liverpool DCP, Part 1 and Part 4, Attachment 1 and 2, and authorise to finalise Amendment 25 with the following amendment. Liverpool Industrial Land Strategy, page 36, a part of that report. 2.35 Sappho Road, Warwick Farm. Diagram change the Warwick Farm race precinct from dark purple heavy industrial to a colour indicative of the zoning of B4 mixture of uses.
Through the CEO, if I can just have
Mr. Smith, you're on.
Sorry, thank you. If you wouldn't mind, can I just bring that up on my screen and have a look at it before that, just so I can make sure on what we're speaking about on that matter?
Sure.
Councillor, could you
go ahead, Councillor?
Yep.
Councillor Rhodes, what page is this? Sorry.
It is on page 36 of the Liverpool Industrial Land Strategy. Whilst we were just waiting for that, I just noticed that into effect and publication required notice in the local newspapers. I thought that was no longer the way that you were to distribute information. We haven't got any local papers anymore.
Oh, no, Councillor, good pickup. You're absolutely correct. We released the report before the changes came through from the OLG. Now we're just required to, we don't have any printed local papers. Now we are just required to put it online. So, George, can you just amend that to come into effect upon the publication online? Thank you, Councillor. Good pickup.
So the amendment that I was making was just to amend point number 1.
Yeah, Mr. Smith is just checking to make sure that he just needs to look at it, Councillor. So just a bit of patience, please.
Okay, no worries.
This is the document.
That's why I'm having a look at that now. But Councillor, that industrial land strategy was EGRO 01, which has already been voted for. This is in relation to a DCP amendment that doesn't apply to this part of the land. So if your concern is about how something's mapped on the draft industrial land strategy subject to EGRO 01, which has already been voted on, we can address that if there is an anomaly during the public exhibition process. That was the resolution of council from earlier on.
Correct. And the delegation there, the two aren't linked. They're two separate documents.
Correct. The amendment to the DCP doesn't apply in this area. I think your concern, Councillor, is if there's a mapping issue in the draft industrial land strategy, and if that's the case, there can be a submission lodged on that and we can fix that up during that process. Thank you.
So do I have to send in a submission for that?
No, Councillor, I'll take that. I'll take that in hand and Mr. Smith and I will look at that. That's not an issue.
Thank you, Madam CEO.
So, Councillor Rhodes, are you happy to move the original motion that's in the book?
Yes, on the authority of the CEO that she will make sure that that's done. I'm happy to move it.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Councillor Seconder?
Happy to second that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Is there any opposition? I'll declare it unanimous. The next item is on page 143.
I have a motion for this, Madam Mayor.
I've got a few questions.
Okay. First of all, I'll hear your motion, councillor.
Okay, my motion is, and I don't know whether you can bring it up, it was sent through to council. That's it there. Do you want me to read it out?
If you could, because some people are probably working on smaller devices.
Okay, that council employ an additional 2 people at an approximate cost of $96,250 per annum per ranger and or environmental health officer for a trial period of 3 months, commencing after the COVID lockdown ceases. Monitor the number, point 2, number the number of out-of-hour issues responded to and reported back to council. Number 3, the out-of-hours shift to have 2 officers who work together. And number 4, council to promote the employment of the out-of-hours ranger and environmental officer surveillance in the Liverpool LGA on council website, social media, and include the service contact access telephone number that is answered by the out-of-hour officers.
Okay. Thank you, councillor. Do you wish to talk to your motion?
Yeah, well, Madam Mayor, the background is just up there as well, that, you know, it was out of the question that council should engage 8 rangers on the out-of-hour shifts, and that was never intended or suggested. But I do think it would be well worth a trial period of 2 employees, and I would suggest 1 ranger and 1 environmental health officer who should be able to handle the out-of-hours operation if they can answer to those requests as they are on duty at the time. That's our biggest problem in this area, is that reporting it, the issue, and it doesn't get addressed at the time of the incident. And of course, there's no point turning up there the day after to try and answer an incident that was in the out-of-hours time. The 2 out-of-hours workers would need to respond together to address the LH&S safety requirements, which were mentioned in the CEO's comments on this. And of course, flashlights and other equipment necessary would be provided, I think, to address the darkness and tripping hazards, which was also mentioned in the CEO's comments. We would need a detailed reporting on all cause and outcomes to be provided to determine ongoing need before committing to extending their contract beyond the first 3 months. And council needs to address that officers are on duty at the time of the offence and not the next day after the offence has been reported. That's the biggest issue that I can see that is causing problems within the LGA and the offences that are happening out of the normal hours for our officers.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, I have a procedural question.
Yes, councillor.
I understand where the councillor is coming from, but I am a little unsure about whether it strays into the realm of operational matters. So I just wanted to understand the legality of the motion.
I'll ask for advice, councillor.
The council can direct me to bring on an after-hours service. There's nothing wrong with that. You determine what goes in the DPOP fundamentally, and if that's one of the elements you would like council to deliver. The direction to employ 2 people is probably a little bit prescriptive on the grounds that you shouldn't really be determining the staff. You do determine the budget and you do determine what council's operations should be. How they are then delivered is in the hands of the CEO. So I think, I mean, we've had things like this that are a little bit, they kind of go either way when we talked about having an ombudsman's position in the past. So, I mean, I think this could stand. It's a trial. My one question to you, though, councillors, of course, is that at the extraordinary meeting I was directed this essentially to run a staff freeze by not increasing the budget from the 1920 level into 2021, which would mean essentially no new positions. You can then determine to give me more money to put on new positions, but I just need to flag with you that it's in contradiction to an existing resolution that I already have.
Okay, can we... Okay, we'll change that first motion.
So Councillor Rhodes, maybe you would like to change it to say trial and after hours service at the expense of no more than X for 3 months. That would mean you're covered. It means you haven't kind of got too far into the weeds there. It gives you exactly what you want. It just makes it a slightly better resolution.
That would be perfect. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Councillor Haggerty, you said you had some comments.
I did, and it sort of goes to that first part of the motion there. Why can't existing staff numbers facilitate a sort of split shift arrangement where you've got sort of some starting at at 7, some starting at 8:39, some starting later in the day to cover that wider window? I don't understand why you'd need to hire additional staff.
Mr. Moore, can you talk a little bit more about the way compliance is currently working?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it works currently on a roster system between those core hours. So to extend beyond those core hours would require additional resources that we just don't currently have, which is explained in the response there. I believe Ms Mardini is on the line too, if you'd like some more detailed analysis of that. But to put it simply, there just isn't the resources to extend those existing number of Rangers staff to beyond those core hours and still provide the same level of service within those core hours.
Yeah,
My understanding that they work in pairs, is that right? Pretty much.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
As long as they were still working in shifts of pairs, I don't sort of understand why. Like, just saying they need additional resources, I'm going to need a bit more sort of meat to that. So a few more questions, I guess. Does the existing award allow them to work sort of in this wider pocket of hours? So whether that's 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. or something outside of the normal 9 to whatever, there's nothing in the award that stops them from doing that. It's simply resourcing. Is that correct?
That's my understanding. I will double check for you, councillors, but we do have staff on the existing award who work a wide range of hours. If you think about CPAC, they're often working up to midnight. So I really don't think there is anything, but of course I'll always double check in industrial matters. So I'll come back to you, but I don't believe it's the case.
Okay. And have the Rangers previously operated on a sort of, I guess you'd call it a split roster where they sort of cover morning and afternoon shifts? In previous years, has that been the case? Like, have we ever done that before?
Not in my history, but again, I'll take that on notice and get you some more information. We've certainly used Rangers in different ways in the past, so that may well be the case, but let us come back to you.
Okay. A few more questions. Are there currently any Rangers that are on call 24 hours? So I'm thinking that, when you get someone complaining about a barking dog, they have to keep a barking diary. And if the dog's barking from 3 to 5 a.m., does that mean that the animal compliance officer needs to go out at 3 to 5 a.m.?
Mr. Moore, can you talk about rostering?
Yes, there aren't currently any Rangers on 24-hour call out, which in the case of barking dogs is why we ask people to document what's been happening. There's actually a workforce currently of just 6 Rangers, not 8 Rangers, just to clarify that. But no, none of the Rangers work on 24-hour call out.
Okay, but what about out of those current core hours? So between I've lost my page on the report, but the current core hours are 8 a.m. to 4:30. Does anyone work outside of those core hours currently?
Ms Mardini, are you there to explain any instances where that happens?
I can't see her, Tim, but
Oh,
we definitely have a weekend roster as well, Councillor Haggerty, where rangers are on weekend call. So when we do have incidents, they're able to go and manage those. But it's a rolling roster. It's not a permanent staff force that does weekends. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I guess my line of questioning there was not so much weekends, but early morning, late night. So one of the reasons was given, if they're working these extended hours, how do they handle slips, trips and falls? If we've already got compliance officers on call when it's dark, I'm sure they have a procedure in place to handle slips, trips and falls. So that was sort of where that questioning was going. And then another reason that was given just under that one is the need for escalation to a supervisor. How many escalation points do we have now? So how many supervisors/managers are on duty at the moment? So you've got the 6, and then above them?
A coordinator, and then the coordinator escalates to the manager, escalates to the director, and then to me if required, although often it comes the other way. It comes to me first and then it escalates down. So I just got some information back here that and I forgot about the animal rangers. They are actually on 24 hours call. So we do have the animal rangers in that space. So the issue is not, while there are some logistical issues around rangers working in the dark or outside of nighttime, at the moment we have enough work within those operating hours. If you start to spread those operating hours, which you can, like there's no, as you asked me, there's nothing to my knowledge in the award that would prevent that, then we're not going to get all the work done that we've previously got done in those operating hours. So it would require some additional resourcing. Does that make sense?
I don't want to sound facetious, but no, if you've got 6 people working 8 hours or 7.6 hours a day, that's still the same amount of people working the same amount of hours.
Yeah, okay. There's work
on 24 hours call, so we do have the animal rangers in that space. So the issue is not...
Is now joining.
Hello.
I think we have a staff member that's just joined us. Shall we?
Is that you, Nada?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, hello, Miss Nardini. Can you help me here, please? I'm obviously not making myself as clear as you will.
Okay. But the question that we do have.
I'll repeat the question. So if we've got 6 compliance officers working 7.6 hours or whatever it is, regardless of whether they start at 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. at 9 a.m., if you've got 6 resources working 7.6 hours, they're still doing the same total amount of work. So I'm not sure why we would need additional rangers.
So if we don't have a lot of officers, so if we don't have enough officers during the day because they can't work all hours, we can split them, but there wouldn't be adequate officers to cover the workload we get. We do have a high workload, particularly in customer requests throughout the day. We can have on call, which is what we have with the animals. The animals we have people on call when there's a dog attack overnight or when there's a dog that needs to be caught in the street. So we could have some similar arrangements for rangers after hours on call, but that would only mean if there's a complaint we would go out. We would have to have 2. We don't necessarily have to have it. It's only if you wanted to cover every day at any time that you would want to have a split roster.
Yep. Okay.
I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Look, I just wanted a bit more context around what was possible and why the need for additional resources.
Yeah, okay. So it's not impossible to split our current rangers into 2, but they won't be able to cover the work during the day.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Haggerty?
Look, I'm happy to move on. There.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councillor Hull.
On this issue here, we're talking about trying to get 2 people after hours to work together. My main concern here, and I imagine the residents too, is one of our biggest issues is illegal dumping after hours. And these two people, if we do look at at that sort of a problem, can we make sure that one of those people has expertise in that particular area? To me, it seems it's not just about checking whether people are parking or trucks are parking. It's in residential areas. It's also about illegal dumping. Now, there is an additional issue, and I probably need advice on this. There is a lot of illegal dumping occurring on private properties, and we know councillors can't do that. But I believe council has an obligation to the community to make sure that they are safe. And when we have toxic materials that residents are pointing out to council that is occurring, council should be doing something about it. Do we need some sort of change in legislation to do that? How do we go about that?
Thank you, Councillor. You are correct. The legislation is fairly challenging in this space. This is actually a matter that the Ombudsman raised with me just today to come back to councillors to have a discussion about possible advocacy and lobbying around legislative change. So I'll take that one on notice, Councillor, but we'll come back to you with a formal briefing on the issues, if that's okay, and suggestions for amendments that we think should be made around the POE and the EPA Act to make this a less complex and prohibitive area for council's compliance officers.
Can I just, the after hours service, in the original motion, it was between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. and 10 p.m. That was what the original motion that brought about this particular issue being on the in the council papers tonight. Now, that was the original motion. I'm listening to the councillors. I don't know whether that is what you guys are talking about now.
Councillor,
are they the hours, the after hours, the qualified after hours being 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 10 p.m?
Yep, that's what all my questioning is about. But yeah.
Well, can we say a trial, an after an hour service, and the trial after hour service, in between that you say 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Yep. I'm happy with that. My issue is I'm not convinced we need additional resources, especially in a time like this.
Well, we've taken that out to councillor and left it up to the CEO, but it certainly doesn't require, a duplication of our services. I don't believe that we need that.
Okay, Councillor, you're speaking to your motion again. Councillor Hitchity, is that you trying?
If I may, I'm speaking for and against this thing. I'm taking, if I may, Councillor Rhodes, would you consider, given that you don't want this to come into effect till after COVID, that we actually defer this, we get some more information, we work out how many ranges we've actually got, and then just come back with a bit more of an informed decision, given that it's not going to start till after COVID lockdown?
Thank you very much for your advice, councillor, but this is already the report brought back to council on this very matter. Now, we can go on making reports, but as far as I'm concerned, we do have an issue in Liverpool, and there is a need for council to have a service of this type.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that's three speaking to the one motion. I think you need to stop. I think, Councillor Chitty, Councillor Rhodes has answered your question quite well.
May I like to foreshadow a motion?
Okay, well, we need a seconder for Councillor Rhodes' motion.
Yeah, I'm happy to second it. So I had it.
Thank you, Councillor Did.
Okay.
All right. Did you wish to have your right of reply, Councillor Rhodes?
I think that I've basically said enough, Madam Mayor. I'm very interested in what this foreshadow motion is going to be, because I believe Haggerty was speaking in favour of the need for a service like this. His main issues seem to be around whether we needed to employ people or whether we could do with a a routine from the current employees, and I am not objectionable to that.
Okay.
You know,
thank you.
I would prefer to see the foreshadow motion now if it might save time.
Well, procedurally, you're not supposed to, but I will indulge you in this sense. Councillor Haggerty, could you give us just an idea of your foreshadowed motion? Don't have to go into everything, but just an overview.
All right. Well, here's another option. Rather than a foreshadow, how about we tack point 5 on, which is council receives a detailed briefing on compliance operations. So that, I guess, fulfills the fact that we want to trial this once COVID lockdown ceases, and then in the interim, we can get the information that that obviously I'm asking for and that's been taken on notice, and that Councillor Chidi appears to be looking for as well.
Also, can I remind you, councillors, that it's been confirmed you only have 6 officers and the document talks about 8. All right. Okay. Any opposition?
I'm going to vote against it. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Shelton. Councillor Shelton's voting against, and I imagine everybody else is voting for, so the motion is carried. The next item's on page 147.
I'm happy to move that. I was just wondering if the police are in favour of this additional alcohol-free zones, because does it mean extra work for them?
No.
Let me answer that with the CEO. It's part of the process, Councillor Rhodes, that the police are involved in the process. And they often will actually request through council various places be deemed as alcohol-free.
Then I'm happy to move the motion.
Thank you. So moved by Councillor Rhodes and seconded by Councillor Shelton. Is there any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour. Those against. Declare it carried. The next item's on page 152.
Madam Mayor, I'm again happy to move that motion with one additional amendment.
And what is it, Councillor? What is your motion?
The amendment is that we also include the Tourism Events and CB Committee Charter to change, so that committee members who cannot attend a meeting may delegate representatives to attend the meeting on their behalf by notifying councillor officers prior to the meeting. And this representative would then be included in the quorum. And 2, change the quorum requirements to a number of committee members 4 rather than half plus 1, because we have a large number of people on that committee that aren't always available to attend.
Thank you. You're moving
Madam Mayor, I have a question about that particular motion.
Yes, Councillor.
Is that quorum requirement, and also that the issue of delegation, is that replicated in any of our other committees?
Not that I'm aware of, Councillor. The membership of committees is actually sanctified by the council itself.
Yes, that's correct. Each committee tends to have a different makeup depending on the size and the desire of council in terms of quorum.
Yep. Okay.
Maybe to second that.
Sorry, Madam Mayor.
So we would need the tourism and what's it called, and CBD committee included as a point form with those other
issues that you raised regarding membership.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to foreshadow.
Any opposition to this motion?
Madam Mayor, I just had a question.
Yes, Councillor.
If that's me, the questions in relation to page 153, in relation to the Liverpool Access Committee Charter, point number 9.4.2, committee members who cannot attend, blah, blah, blah. Possibly you want that to read non-councillor committee members who cannot attend.
That's a matter for council to determine.
It's a
so
matter
just looking at that motion. The Tourism and Events and CBD committee is the one committee.
Yes, so, we understand, Councillor. It's just going through the logistics and everything. Okay, Councillor Sheldon, are you proposing an amendment? Councillor Sheldon. I think I've lost him. I think so.
Mayor, can I ask a question while we're trying to find Councillor Shelton?
Yeah, certainly, Councillor.
Thanks. Just a question, and I'm sure it'll be taken on notice to the CEO. Are all our other committees, policies, charters, all up to date?
I'll have to take that on notice. I believe the committee charters are all up to date, but I'll double check that for you. There are some policies that are outstanding, and as you know, we've been trying to bring them to council to get them resolved. But
Yeah,
I'll give you a report.
Take that on notice. That'd be great.
Yeah,
Which ones are out of date? Thank you.
Councillor Shelton, have you returned?
No, he has. Please.
Can you hear me, Madam Mayor?
Did you wish to amend that motion?
Yes, if the answer was in the affirmative, it dropped out on me. That was to incorporate 9.4.2 on the basis it reads non-council or committee members, etc., etc.
Okay, so you're amending that charter to read that. Thank you.
The mover and the seconder are happy to do it.
Are they happy, Councillor Rhodes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay then. Is there any opposition to this motion? No opposition. I'm going to declare it carried. Next item is on page 152. No, that was 152. I apologise. Oh no,
207.
Yep, I've got to turn the page. The recommendations on 208.
Happy to move that, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hall.
Happen to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Still trying to turn the page, sorry. Right, any opposition? I'll put it, those in favour, those against, declare it carried unanimously. Next item's on page 214.
Move that way.
Thank you, Councillor.
I've got a question on that one.
Yes, Councillor.
Although there is land and there's obviously parking within that area, there is no reason why we could not lobby the people who own that land to increase the footprint of parking by a multi-storey car park and then lobby state and federal government for funding to build car parks on that land. Is there any reason why we couldn't do that?
No, there's no reason at all, Councillor, and I think the report makes clear as well, and I think council staff have certainly been doing it, trying to talk to Transport for New South Wales about using their existing car parking footprint, because you know most of that land is owned by the state government, more strategically than just on ground like they have at the moment. So you're absolutely right.
Well, I'm happy to add that to the recommendation. The council receives and notes the report. Council notes that most of the land is owned by the state, and council continues to lobby the state government for multi-storey car parking within 100 metres of Liverpool train station.
That's fine, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor.
I'd like to move a foreshadowed. Sorry, I was a bit lost. I was supposed to move that as it was my motion, originally my motion. But can I move a foreshadowed, unless our councillors would be happy to add what I have something to add, unless they'd be happy to take that on board?
Well, how about you speak against the motion and then we'll get a flavour of what your foreshadowed motion is.
Sure. So it was kind of measured from the centre. The 100-metre radius was measured from the centre of the train station, where I had assumed it would be measured from, the front of the station or the outskirt of the station. So I was hoping that radius could be made larger and then it come back to council. Because I didn't assume that it would be measured from the centre of the train station when I first put up this motion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Haggie, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Sure. I don't know, 200 metres? What are we talking here?
Yeah, look, I was thinking because they measured it from where they did, and look, I don't know if this goes back, if they're going to be measuring it from the centre, through the chair, sorry if I may, from the centre of the train station again. So...
my only concern there is that if I put my head to it, you've got Big Park to the north, you've got the school to the west, you've got the river to the east, and you've got the train to the. I think we'll send council staff off to do duplicate work and come back with the same answer.
Okay, then I have an idea. Then why don't we do, through the chair, if I may, why don't we do a 300-metre radius, and let's include Scott Street and Railway Street.
Can I just ask a question to staff? Is this covered in the CBD parking strategy? I don't want to, if we've already got this information at hand.
I don't think that the level of specificity that Councillor Ayad is looking for is in the parking strategy. There's nothing to prevent council staff looking at a broader scope. I think we are likely to come up against similar issues, that it's either state or it's privately owned commercial properties, but I have absolutely no objection to looking at it. Normally, when you do measure something, you measure it from the centre, so I defend staff doing that, but we can certainly broaden the scope. There's no issue with that at all if that's what you desire.
All right, 300 metres, but can we, I guess, check in with Councillor Ayad before councillors go, before council staff go off and do all this work for what it appears to have been not much value, that we sort of check in and make sure that she's comfortable, and I think maybe other councillors are comfortable with that radius, so that there's some value to this.
To do that, that's not a problem.
Councillor Ayad, do you have that being included?
Actually on 24 hours full, so we do have the annual ranges in that space. So the issue is not...
Is now exiting.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, yeah, I'd be happy with that. I mean, look, I want all the other councillors as well to be comfortable, because we don't want to go back and forth with this. Just in reference to what the CEO mentioned before, I didn't realise that when they measure something, it'd be measured directly from the centre. Yeah. So in hindsight, 100 metre radius was a little bit silly. So if councillors even want a larger radius, I'm happy to. I'd be happy with that.
Councillor suggesting 300 metres.
What about if we can make it within Liverpool CBD boundaries?
Well, I think that picks up on your parking strategy, Councillor. That's part of that already. I mean, this particular motion is very much about the railway station. Am I correct, Councillor Ed?
Yes.
Yeah.
The intent.
Okay. Well, look, we've got a 300 metres of Liverpool railway station.
Madam Mayor, before you put that, having regard to all the changes that have been made, I withdraw my seconding to that motion. Possibly Councillor Yard would like to be a seconder instead.
Councillor Ayad, are you happy to second?
Madam Mayor, I would be very pleased.
Okay. All right.
And you know what? Also, in light of what Councillor Councillor Hadid just said, can we just make it a 600 metre radius? And definitely include the whole of Scott Street and the whole of Railway Street, because I think that covers it quite thoroughly, and then we won't be going back and forth.
Councillor Haggerty, are you happy with those changes as the mover?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any opposition?
Yes.
I vote against it. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Shelton and Councillor Hall voting against it. Okay. Any other people voting against it? Right, well then the motion has been carried. Next item's on page 217.
Madam Mayor, I've got a motion for this one. And it might come up on screen. Now, I may not have worded it the right way. I appreciate and thank the council for their report, but I questioned the costs that they put into that. But I see this as a longer-term vision for something that can be done for Liverpool. So the motion, I think, that might come up for me. So the motion is that Council prepare a master plan for a visitation precinct that includes Collingwood House, Liverpool Museum, new Liverpool Historical Society building, and an Aboriginal Arts and Culture and Learning facility, a cafe and car and bus parking. For the land bounded by the Hume Highway, Congressional Drive and Brick Dale Crescent, Liverpool. Prepare the visitation concept precinct master plan design and possible costs and report back to council. I said July council meeting 2020 in order to further place on exhibition for community consultation. And 3, lobby state and federal governments for funding, including the visitation and include the visitation master plan in the 10-year plan of council. And could we consider the government initiative for T-Corp loans that they've got out at the moment for community projects? Would that be applicable for this project at the next budget review meeting?
Thank you, Councillor. That's being moved. We've got a seconder.
Happy to
Councillor Howell seconding. Thank you. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Rhodes?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I feel that as much as we're in a precarious situation because of the COVID, it is also opportunities for us to be sort of have some foresight for the future as we come out of this. And that particular precinct area is just begging as a visitation precinct. It's got everything that you require there. I realise that there would be difficulties in talking to the Aboriginal arts and culture people, but if it could all come together, it would be a fabulous thing for Liverpool and something that would serve Liverpool well into the future, and something that the people of Liverpool can identify with and feel proud about their community. It does, I like the bit about including the Aboriginals with them running that facility. There's just so many positives about a concept of this that strikes me that it would be a very, very good thing for Liverpool. And, it's very difficult for councillors to be able to play a part to, put forward suggestions that we look at things that are very innovative. And so that's what I'm trying to do here.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against the motion? Okay, we've had the speaker for. There's been no other speakers. I'll put the motion. Any speakers, anybody against the motion, please speak up. Motion is moved and accepted. Thank you. Next item's on page 245.
Yeah, move the recommendation, Madam Mayor. Councillor.
Yeah, I'll second that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dick. Councillor Shelton. Any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, carried. Next item's on page 255. Turning the page.
Yeah, move it.
Quick as I can. Thank you, Councillor Did. We've got a seconder.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Any opposition? I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, carried. Next item's on 258.
I've got a question. It's a budget question. I wasn't sure which report to put it in. So given this is the last one, I'll ask that one.
Yep.
And it's probably going to be taken on notice, but I'm happy to put it into the recommendation that we note the report. But a question through the CEO to Mr. Nadan, if I can. Is it possible to get modelling on the city development fund, or otherwise known as the TIF fund, or previously known as TIF fund, and what impact that has if council, let's say, was to waive that fee for 3 months or for 6 months?
Mr. Nadan, can you speak to that, please?
To the CEO, currently we collect about $1.6 million on an annual basis from this special levy, and it's a special levy that the council decided to charge the ratepayers of the CBD, and the councillors have obviously a right to change that if they want to. The quarterly impact, I would think, is about $400,000, which is 25% of $1.6 million. Going forward, how it's going to impact, I have to take that on notice, and I would, from the top of my mind, I think we will have to inject some funds based on the current commitments in year 3, which is 2022 and 23.
All right. Thanks.
I have a question as the chair. Aren't some of those funds tied up in the beautification of the mall and big park?
Mr. Nadan, can you speak to that?
To the CEO, I don't have the details in front of me, but there are major commitments going forward. One of them I can say is the repayment of loan that we took from the for the refurbishment of the Macquarie Mall, and that goes for next 6 years.
Yeah, I thought that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just through you, Chair, Mayor. Sorry.
Yep.
And yes, I'll wait for that question on notice. That's great, but I'll just flag with councillors pending that report. Possibly at the next council meeting, so everyone's aware and it's not just a shock at the last minute. Pending that report, I could be putting forward a motion where we're waiving it for 3 or 6 months to help out the city centre businesses who are struggling through this time.
Okay, thank you, councillor. Any opposition? It's got to be moved and seconded, sorry.
Happy to move it, Mayor.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Thank you, councillor Did. No opposition, I'll put it. Those in favour, those against, carried. Next item's on page 268.
Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move that with a couple of additions. That Council receives and notes the report with an amendment to include solar panels on the exhibition hall roof with necessary power to run the air conditioning system. That's in A, and B, instead of in future, in next year's capital works.
Okay, thank you. We've got a seconder.
Happy to second that.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak to your motion, councillor Rhodes?
I think it's very clear. The solar panels have been mentioned by Councillor Hall at several meetings regarding this particular opportunity for them to go onto the exhibition hall and run the air conditioning. The problem with the hall at the moment, as we all know, is that without the air conditioning, that hall becomes extremely hot in summer, and it's just barely bearable. And if the solar panels were put on the roof, as he suggested, the cost of it would certainly pay for itself in a number of years. So I do have to give Councillor Hull full credit for that suggestion about the solar panels. And I do note that it was meant to be included in it from recent meetings that we've had as councillors, but for some reason they just missed it out.
Thank you, councillor. Any opposition?
Yes, Mayor, I'm opposed.
Yes, councillor, did you wish to discuss that? Opposition or just... Okay, go ahead.
I should explain. I don't have an issue with solar panels. I've got solar panels on my roof and a nice battery. They work well. I encourage everyone to get them. They really cut down on your power bills. My issue with this is we haven't done the requisite investigation into this. So how much does solar panel, like it'd be a pretty massive solar array that we're sort of whacking on the roof here. How much is that going to cost? Will we need to reinforce the roof? Will the roof be able to handle the additional weight when you put solar panels on there? If so, how much is that going to cost? So more than happy to investigate solar panels, but not go ahead and just, within the next, we're basically 2 months from next year. So we're saying, let's throw a whole bunch of money at solar panels and go ahead with it. I can't make a decision like that. I don't think it's responsible management of council's budget, given the situation we're in, to spend potentially, who knows, $500,000 million without knowing how much that's going to cost. So I'm happy to support it if we get a report into the cost of, let's come back with a couple of quotes. How much would it cost for a small, medium, large set of solar panels on the roof? What additional works would be needed to get them running, and how much would all that cost?
Madam Mayor, could I make a suggestion?
Yes, Councillor Hall.
Change the wording where in other words, it says receives and notes this report with amendment to include the feasibility of solar panels.
Yeah.
I think that would fix it. The other thing is, just to speak in support of this, we are going to look at round about $700,000 to come up with an alternative supply to there For $700,000, I'm sure you can put solar panels on there that would power the air conditioning system.
Okay, may I also
Madam
make
Mayor, I
the
have a
suggestion?
question.
Hold on a minute, Councillor Caliendo. I'd also make the suggestion you take out include in next year's capital works program, because you may get information back that just says that can't happen. So I think notes the identified works be included in next year's capital works program if feasible, or you just remove it.
If feasible.
For the moment.
Happy to put in the words if feasible.
Okay.
Happy to support.
If feasible. Okay, thank you. Councillor Caliendo?
Yes, I was wondering whether solar panels and that sort of thing would be covered by some of the sort of infrastructure grants and funding that have been made available by state and federal governments to kind of stimulate the economy.
I haven't seen a specific solar panel program yet, but it's fair. I'd say you're onto a winner there. It'd be quite likely. There was a stimulus package for which we did put in an application around LED lighting. So I assume these energy efficient projects are going to be quite appealing. So certainly if we're able to seek funding through a program like that, of course we would do so.
Okay.
Is that worth adding, or? Yeah, sorry, I'm choking here, but is that explicitly worth adding that council seek grants for?
If you wish to, I mean, we certainly would. We always do for CapEx, but if you wish to put it in and make it explicit, why not?
And make a point 3 that council.
Happy with that.
Okay. Seeks appropriate grants for the project. That's a point 3. Okay, any opposition? Okay, I'll put it, those in favour, those against, declare it carried. Next item's on page 271.
Move that way, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any opposition?
Just a question, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Yep.
In relation to point 2, it's got notes that a program of improvement works covering the identified rural roads will be included in Council's 2019-20 works program. I was wondering if the responsible person could indicate what the progress is in relation to that, just in a few sentences, bearing in mind that the 2019-20 works program is nearly finished.
Councillor, I asked exactly the same question, so I'll ask Mr Attar to expand on that, please.
Thank you.
Through the CEO, I'm very pleased to advise that both those projects have actually now been completed. We run a program to provide enhanced road maintenance works, which these two streets qualified for, and those works have recently been completed. I'm happy to send photos in the next few days to show the good work these staff have done. Thank you.
Wonderful, thanks.
Thank you. Any opposition?
Madam Mayor, I just have a question.
Yes, certainly.
Flynn Avenue, has that been finished? Is that finished? Flynn Avenue, Middleton?
Through the CEO, yes, the section that the report refers to have been completed, but I'm aware there may be other sections of Flynn Avenue that weren't identified for repairs and the kind of improvements that we've been talking about. But near 27th Avenue and Percival have been completed. Yes.
Okay, great. I'll check it out when I'm no longer in isolation.
Thank you very much. Any opposition? I'll put it, those in favour, those against, carried. Next item's on page 274.
Can we note that that was carried unanimously, Madam Mayor?
Unanimous from the, okay, we can do that. Unanimous for the last item. Next item's on page 274.
I have a motion for that.
Yes, Councillor, what's your motion?
Can that come up, George? The motion is that Council receives and notes this report, and 2, investigates virtual fencing to mitigate road kill of koalas at kill spots in Liverpool. 3, meet with Featherdale Wildlife Park in time to contribute to the response to issues raised in Info 04 and NOM 02 Animal Shelter. And 4, notes that a further report will be provided following completion of investigations into the outcomes of the feasibilities of providing a koala hospital and sanctuary within the LGA by the May, June or July council meeting. Now, May, June or July is obviously in there. Obviously I'd want it sooner rather than later, seeing that this is a report from a motion that I put up. But I want council to give me feedback on the possibilities of all that. And the background that you read there is the virtual fencing is a device that is activated by approaching headlights, which causes it to emit a combination of sound and light that alert and repel animals from the roadside. The alert system of audible alert and blue and yellow strobe type LED lights are emitted by a device placed at 25-metre intervals on alternating sides of the road. They are only loud and bright enough to be noticed by wildlife in the immediate vicinity. The mobile device is about the size of a mobile phone. The device has been used in Tasmania to protect Tasmanian devils with noticeable reduction in roadkills for possums and wombats as well. And they're solar power operated. So that was the intention of that, the koala habitat corridors. In Liverpool, our main issue is by providing the corridors for them to move through Liverpool. They're not staying in Liverpool, but they're moving at times of mating and things like that. And in the processes, they're being killed on roads. So this would be a system that is cheap and is having effect in other areas.
Through you, Madam Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yes, certainly, but I just want to explain that Councillor Rhodes has just formally spoken to her motion. Councillor Caliander, sorry.
I was just wondering if there is sort of a ballpark in terms of costs of the virtual fencing, and it seems a bit of a shame to kind of go it alone, because I think we've mentioned in previous council meetings that koalas, amongst other animals, don't really respect LGA boundaries. So it might be something that's worth that's better discussed with neighbouring councils as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you wish to amend that to maybe a 0.5 that council negotiates with other councils bordering Liverpool?
Or discusses, I don't know.
You don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that was already mentioned that council is doing that, particularly with, I think they said Sutherland Council, but I'm happy for that to go into the motion to discuss and negotiate with other councils bordering Liverpool, because it is very important that we protect along the road, and Councillor Caliander is right, Heathcote Road, which is one of our, problem areas, and that goes straight into the Sutherland Council.
Sorry, but I guess my primary question was around the cost of virtual fencing. So is there any information about that that's available?
Well, I didn't get the costing on it. I presumed that council would get the costing. That's the investigations into the outcomes of the feasibility.
We can certainly come back to you, councillors, with some information about that. Councillor Rhodes is correct. It is being used quite extensively in Tasmania in relation to the Tasmanian devils. So there will be good information and hopefully a range of possible suppliers. But we can find that out when we do investigations.
Thank you. We need a seconder.
Happy to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Hull. Is there any opposition? I'll put it, those in favour, those against, declare it carried. The next item's on page 278.
I again have another motion for this one, Madam Mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps that will come up. I thank council for their report. We're very familiar with what Blacktown was proposing in theirs. But this is a long-winded process, and I'd like to see it to progress. And so the motion reads that council receives and notes the report, and identifies land at Rossmore Grange that can accommodate a permanent animal shelter and possible koala sanctuary in the Liverpool LGA. If the koala sanctuary is not provided in the Western Sydney parklands and includes a possible animal training and exercise facility. 3, prepare a report on cost to build a temporary animal holding facility on the current site if a long-term lease could be arranged with the current owner for a period necessary for council to build its new permanent facility at Rossmore Grange. B, build a temporary holding facility on the Rossmore Grange site land where the permanent facilities would be built. C, time it would take to build temporary and permanent facilities. D, inclusive of concept designs, costing and funding strategy for the building of the proposed animal facilities, both temporary and permanent, that is comparative to the current facility. And E, an option to include possible koala sanctuary with a third party interested in joint venture and agrees to its management of the sanctuary operation. And F, the reports to be presented back. Again, this is really super urgent. So, you know, I would be hoping that we can get them back in May. So that's the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Have we got a seconder?
I'll second that, Mayor.
Councillor Chitty, thank you. You've spoken. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Rhodes?
Look, Madam Mayor, I've spoken on this particular issue, and the report certainly gave us depth of field with what Blacktown is doing. It is, I think it's pretty well united by all councillors that we do want the animal holding facility in the Liverpool LGA. We know that our current situation is not a permanent one, and it is it is a matter of urgency that council moves on this as soon as possible. And I was expecting the report back to this particular meeting with answers rather than just information that we already really know about. That's the reason why I'm putting the motion up again.
Thank you, Councillor. Any speakers against the motion?
I'll speak against, just so I can speak. I had a similar motion that I was going to put up. It's probably about 80% the same, but I'll sort of point out where mine differed, and if councillors are willing, they can accept these differences or not. I accept that Rossmore Grange is probably the best piece of council land that we've got, or the most optimum if you just sort of have a quick look. I don't think we should necessarily be that prescriptive. I think something identifies council land, such as Rossmore Grange. So I think we look at all options in regards to council land, but specifically call out Rossmore Grange. I don't know about the koala sanctuary, given it's not about koala sanctuary. We just spoke about a koala sanctuary, but that's neither here nor there. Temporary holding facility, I think we need to be a bit more prescriptive with that. So it is possible to purchase or lease demountable kennels. So and they're actually much better than they sound. They're not sort of like what demountable classrooms are. The normal classrooms are actually sort of pretty decent quality, my understanding is. So I think we need to be a bit more prescriptive there in terms of the temporary holding facility. So build a temporary holding facility, potentially using demountable kennels. And again, the Rossmore Grange stuff, I think we've been too prescriptive, but happy with the rest of it. So, yeah. So if Councillor Rhodes and Councillor Chitty are happy to take on those sort of minor amendments, I'd be happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor.
A question for you,
Yes,
Mayor.
Councillor Chitty.
The report also flags that next month we're receiving, and I noticed that we're receiving a report on options and sites. Can anyone speak to our findings so far on other sites?
I'll ask the CEO.
Yeah, we're currently looking at a number of other sites, including in particular another parcel of land that has been used essentially as an animal shelter in the past. I don't want to talk any further about that if that's okay without going into confidential.
So,
well, if it's coming back in May, I'd be willing to change, identifies the Rossmore Grange.
I think you just put identifies land.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, we've certainly clearly heard your interest in Rossmore Grange there, so that will, if that's not already been considered, and I'd be surprised if it hasn't, I just don't have the full details on my hand. We'll certainly look at Rossmore.
And you'll include that in the report?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You need to, yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
So can we take out June and July and just leave the report to be presented back to the May council meeting?
Yes, it will be apparently from the sounds of it.
Yeah, yeah, we'd like to come back with some land options at that time.
Okay, thank you. Any opposition?
Sorry, Councillor Haggerty, did you have more? Sorry, through you, Chair.
Yeah, sorry. I think we might want to leave B as is. Like, I think if certain things fall through, I think we still need hard information on the time and cost to build a facility somewhere, and I'm happy to sort of go. I'm happy to make point B, I guess, our braid glass option, if that makes sense. That let's find out how much it costs to build a facility at Rossmore Grange, and how long that would take. Like, I think we need that as our sort of, yeah, as I said, break glass option. So I think we should specifically mention Rossmore Grange there, but yeah.
Councillors, you will see that in the report there is an indicative timeline view and indicative costings. While it refers to the Wesrock report, what we've done is use that as a benchmark because it was a very strong piece of work. Wesrock do good work to give you an idea. So you do have some sense of a timeline and you do have some sense of the indicative costs. To get into detail, what we can come back with in May is a range of land use options for you. To get beyond indicative costs requires detailed design, which is contingent on which piece of land you pick. So it may be a slightly staggered process. I just want to flag that for you.
And through you, Madam Mayor, just on that, the things within the report, like council based their plans on 120 types of animals. Could council identify those different types and how many of each council would be likely to hold in this facility annually? And
we can certainly do that, councillor. We've got estimates on how many dogs, how many cats, and how much livestock from our experience, and they seem to hold fairly true.
20 different types of animals. In answer to that, Madam CEO.
Why don't I take that on notice, and we'll get you some more detailed information about that.
And the other thing that we need to make sure that we're identifying that, you know, the size of the facility, because the Blacktown one was one for the Western City. This is for the Liverpool LGA. And I know that the Blacktown one was very expensive with their big plans of what they were doing. We just need to be comparing apples with apples. Our current facility, I believe, has 120 cats and 120 dogs annually or thereabouts. From what I know, but that sort of information, so that we clearly know what you have in mind.
Yeah.
As to size and capacity.
Certainly, councillor, no problem at all. We can get that for you.
Sorry, can I just make one more comment? I know I've already spoken, but I want to make sure that staff are entirely clear what the intention here is. That there's the option for the permanent facility, which is, you've given us some decent figures and timeframes on that. There is the current facility where we may or may not, you know, have a lease running out. So you've got the short-term option, you've got the long-term option. What I'm talking about here is the medium-term option. So if we need a medium gap fill option, that's where that temporary facility at somewhere like Rossmore Grange with demountable kennels and demountable. Right. So just, I guess I'm not preempting the report, but I guess, you know, short-term, medium-term, long-term is sort of where my thinking is at. So
Yeah,
I'll
no,
leave.
thank you. That makes sense, Councillor Haggerty. I just want to stress again that we can certainly come back with land options in May. We can come back with indicative figures, but even for a medium-term figure, I can't give you detailed design until we've done detailed design, even for putting in demountables. It depends where the land is, depends whether it's serviced. So there's a number of factors. So we can give you rough indicative figures, but I can't put my hand on heart and say this is going to cost 4.5 million or whatever it is until we've got a decision on the land and then we've done some detailed design work. So I just want to flag, because I don't want to put staff under pressure for something they literally can't deliver until we've made a decision on the parcel of land.
Would it help if we made a decision that it goes out at Rossmore Grange?
I think, Councillor, we would need to do a little bit of investigative work there before you could make that decision, whether it's permissible to begin with, what the costings would be. Obviously, Rossmore Grange isn't serviced in the same way Bringelly Road is, so that would be an additional cost as well. So I think the approach that the councillors have taken is a very sensible one, but I can't come back to you with the exact figure. It's like when we have a master plan, I can tell you it's going to cost approximately $10 million, but until Mr. Ottar's team has had time to do the detailed design work, I can't give you an exact figure. It's an impossibility. So what we'll do is flag what the possible financial impacts on each of those parcels of land might be. So is it serviced? Are there required road upgrades? Anything, I'm talking off the top of my head here, those servicing would be the number one, so that you're aware of that.
Madam Mayor, if I may, sorry, I'm having some technical difficulty here. I've got two computers going, but anyway, so is this Councillor Rhodes' motion that she's moving? Okay.
Yes.
Look, I haven't read it in depth, but I just need to clarify. I actually had something I wanted to add to the original motion. I'm hoping that Councillor Rhodes' motion actually covers it. So what I was hoping was that council would allow animal shelters to become a permitted use in RE1 public recreation. So basically my aim is to allow the council to have the flexibility to locate an animal shelter throughout the LGA on any land basically that's RE1 which is owned by council.
The mover of the motion and the seconder would have to agree to that being an additional point. Would you be happy to take that on board, Councillor Rhodes?
I'm trying to think. I can't think of if you're just making a blanket RE1.
That just flagging, councillors, that obviously requires gateway with Department of Planning as well. So, we need to prepare the planning proposals for that. Councillor Ayad, you are absolutely correct that it is not currently permissible on RE1. So,
So the reason I was hoping to do that was because, when the lease finishes up, then what? Then another location has to be found. Our council, I'm hoping that a permanent facility can be built within the Liverpool LGA to home these animals for a very long time. So I was hoping with the new LEP that we could find a proper permanent location and then it's dealt with and we no longer need to worry about it. Mama, please, I haven't finished my meeting, okay? Come
on. Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor.
Just in relation to locking down that particular location, I have some serious concerns because currently, the area around that has been slated for residential, and to locate an animal shelter in very close proximity to upcoming residential, I can foresee creating conflicts between residents who move in, who then are in close proximity to, animals and noises and things like that. And, that would be something that I would be quite strongly against.
Which parcel of land are you talking about, Councillor?
Yeah. I just want to clarify that too, please.
Did you mean a specific parcel of land or just generally rezoning RE1?
Just generally rezoning RE1 because, a lot of the land that we're dealing with is, is planned for rollout of residential development over the next sort of 5 to 10 years. And if we're not keeping that into consideration, we are creating conflicts down the line and with residents.
Madam Mayor, if I could just clarify, when I refer to RE1, I mean only lands that are owned by council. So maybe if council could identify an area for us in the interim period, once we've locked the lease in for the next couple of years, maybe we could put together a timeline where council staff can come back to us and say, these are the RE1 public recreation areas that council owns. These are the designated ones that we believe would be good for an animal shelter for many, many years to come.
Councillor, I understand your passion.
Yeah.
But the motion is actually trying to deal with all those issues. Plus, we've been told that there'll be a report coming to the May council meeting with a lot more detail and costings and also location choices. Okay. So I think trying to zone something on the hop is maybe not the best way to do it. I would suggest you wait until you get the report. If the report fails to basically address the issues that everybody's raising, well, then you have other avenues.
Okay, well, Madam Mayor, could maybe the report outline for us RE1 areas which council owns, which might be suitable?
Well, they will be, Councillor. They will be actually coming back to us with suitable land available. The CEO is unable to publicly discuss it for obviously prudent and financial reasons.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. And just another question. In the meantime, is Rossmore Grange, is that locked in?
No. No, that's what we were talking to Councillor Rhodes about, as it being one of the options, but we are unable at this point because of the pending report and the different locations that the council is looking at to actually name anything particularly for all those other reasons.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, my kids are all over me. I'm all over the place. Pardon me, Madam Mayor.
I understand the feeling, believe it or not. Yes, Councillor Chitty.
Through to the CEO, I would take it. Have any discussions taken place with the current landowner or the purchaser in relation to any possible extensions for the facility on that site?
My understanding is some discussions have taken place, but can I take that on notice again? I want to be careful about what I say in a public forum, and we'll get back to councillors.
All right. If it is possible that we may be able to, and obviously we've got a report coming, temporarily do something around that area until we build our own, do any zoning changes need to take place in that proximity to do that?
Mr. Moore, can you talk to the potential zoning issues around the current shelter?
I'll have to take that on notice. I'm sorry, I haven't got anything to confirm. I can report back shortly, but I haven't got anything to confirm what the current zoning is immediately at hand.
All right, and sorry, just another one. You can take this on notice if you choose to. If you can't answer it, that's fine. If there was a need to, let's say, add a temporary use on something surrounding where it currently is, because it might go over to the boundary to the end or to the back for a temporary use, how long would it take, do you think, for council to present a report to government for a additional permitted use?
I see you're looking for a change in zoning potentially for permitted use. Mr. Moore, how long would it take to prepare a planning proposal in that space?
Oh, look, we could do that. We could do that really pretty quickly. But can I get back to you, pretty soon after the meeting with an answer to the zoning question and the timing?
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? You have a motion before you, moved by Councillor Rhodes and second by Councillor Chitty. Any opposition? I'll deem that the motion is unanimous, and moving on now to the committees.
I have no issues with the committees. I'm happy to move them as a whole.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes.
I'll second that.
I second it.
Madam Mayor, could I ask that committee number 6 be pulled out? I've just got a question in relation to committee number 6. That's the Tourism Committee.
All right, no problem. Okay, we've had a motion by Councillor Rhodes and second by Councillor Did that the committees as a whole be adopted, with the exception of number 6. Any opposition? I'll deem it adopted. And committee number 6, Councillor Shelton.
On page 337, there's a motion from the Tourism Committee that was originally put up some time back, and it probably made sense at the time the motion was put up, but now it's really been overtaken by events. It calls for a report to be prepared from City Economy team if there are any ongoing impacts of the coronavirus on Liverpool's economy. Well, I don't think we need to be asking if there are any impacts. I think we well know the answer to that. There are a number of other reports that have been prepared in the meantime. So either I suggest that that item be deleted. It looks kind of silly now in the present time as opposed to when it was originally put up. As I said, it probably makes sense when it was originally passed, and I seconded it in any event. That either it's deleted or that it's changed, bearing in mind that we now have a number of reports, and frankly, we know the answer to what the motion asks for anyway.
I think we could probably see that motion as lapsing. Formally. Okay.
Happy to move that that committee, the minutes for committee number 6, the tourism committee, be adopted, noting that the motion on page 337 has lapsed in the circumstances.
Okay, we've got
That's the first motion on page 337. Lapses in the circumstances.
We've got a seconder. Seconder. Don't all rush me.
I'll second that for him.
Thank you, Councillor Rhodes. Is there any objection? I'll put it, those in favour, those against, declare it carried. Next item is on page 404, question with notice 01 in the name of Councillor Balut. I gather you're happy with the response, Councillor Balut? You said somewhere. I'm assuming that's on page 404. Councillor Balut. All right, I'll move to question 2, which is for page 14, and it's also in Councillor Balut. That's also got the response. Councillor 3 is Councillor Balut again. There's also a response. Question with notice 04, Councillor Haggerty.
Happy to report that I'm actually here, Madam Mayor. I'm happy with the answer. Thank you.
Now, Councillor Balut is here. I've been notified that he is here. Might be having technological problems.
Excellent.
Question 05, in Councillor Shelton's name.
I'm happy with the response. Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I thank the staff for their efforts in relation to as much.
Thank you. I appreciate the staff being thanked, especially at this very stressful time. The next item is question 6, and again in the name of Councillor Balut, and there's questions asked and responses there. And the next item's on question 7, or Councillor Chitty and his trees.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to ask if I can that we go into closed session. I'm going to move a motion. It's going to disclose a resident's address, and I believe because of that, we need to go into closed session because we're talking about a resident.
All right, okay.
I was just trying to find this section in the Act, which I hopefully will find by then.
Section 10.
Mr Maguire, can you please assist Councillor Chitty and email him?
Thank you. So moved by Councillor Chitty and seconded by Councillor. Did we go into closed session to discuss that particular item? Next item is NOM01, and it's in Councillor Rhodes's name.
Okay, I thank very much Council's report back on it. I'm still very confused as to, like, you've got the Environmental Protection Lobby, which provides, you know, for the people of Liverpool because they're protecting the environment of Liverpool. And I question, is it a part of its responsibility, the protection of the environment in way of in protecting the Liverpool wildlife?
Yes, thank you. Would staff like to answer the question?
Mr Otter, can you please speak about what the environmental levy gets used for?
Thank you, Madam CEO. Thank you, Councillor, for that question. So the Environment Restoration Plan and the corresponding levy, whilst it's pretty prescriptive in terms of the scope of program and scope of projects that can be undertaken, let's say if you were to undertake activities that provides habitat, that supports wildlife, then that would be fully within the scope and the intention of the Environment Restoration Plan and the program. So let me take this further notice and get back to you with a more comprehensive response regarding what further can be done.
That's okay. I therefore propose a motion, which I hope will come up now. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that if Council so wishes to move ahead with things like that virtual fence, perhaps funding for them, which I know that they're not very expensive, might be able to be easily paid for out of the environmental levy. So the motion is that Council recognises the importance of wildlife protection and the economic benefit that Australian wildlife continues to contribute through tourism in the local and national economies, nominates a percentage proportion of the environment levy to be used to support wildlife protection through the Liverpool LGA, and 3, provides all reports and communications in relation to the above work already carried out and or implemented by... Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm reading the last motion. No, the motion was as put. Sorry, go back to number 1, provides a percentage of the environment protection levy for the protection of wildlife in the Liverpool LGA, and amend the environment protection levy to include protection of wildlife as a part of the Liverpool LGA, but that doesn't seem like that's going to be necessary because it is a protection of the habitat.
Yes.
Of wildlife.
Okay.
So I think we can just get rid of number 2. And I think we should put in provides a percentage of the environment protection levy for the protection of wildlife in the Liverpool LGA, providing the environment protection levy accepts the protection of habitat for wildlife as being one of its
responsibilities.
Responsibilities. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Happy to second, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hall, seconding.
Rid of number 2.
Do you want to discuss that, Councillor Rhodes?
Look, I think it's. I think the motion speaks for itself. You know, I think that we do have to be more responsible in trying to protect our wildlife. We all know, you know, the devastation that has happened to our wildlife because of the fires that we've had, and unless we actually do stuff to help, it's not going to recover. And this particular motion is being led by the hope that virtual fences can be put up to protect them from being run over, at least. I know that, you know, the creation of corridors and everything like that is being very difficult to achieve, although Council has done its best in talking with the Defence and also initiating communication with the Sutherland Council, which I think is vitally important because we can't, as Councillor Caliander has already pointed out, these animals don't know the local government boundaries, and so we've got to do everything in unison. But I do see that it is something that we do need to provide funds for, to be able to help in what ways that we possibly can, and therefore that's why I'm putting up this motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Any opposition?
But could I make a suggestion, Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councillor Hall, you are the seconder.
Yes, we do have the Environmental Advisory Committee meetings.
Yes.
And could they be asked to nominate a percentage? We said provide a percentage, but how much? I think it might be
Councillor, I think that would be a bit unwise because you can't have a committee allocating council funds on behalf of council. And also the environmental levy is also committed to various things, including trash racks and other things. So I think the notion of as it stands would probably be the wiser way to move. And that gives the staff time to look at the general amount of money they have, and because there are other issues as well that are being dedicated using those funds.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hall, for your suggestion. Any other speakers?
Just through you, Madam Mayor, it's Councillor Baluti. Sorry, I had my mic off for a little while there. I'd just like to thank the staff and council for all those questionable notice.
No worries. No worries. Thank you, Councillor Blue. Okay, I'm going to put it. Those against, please speak up. I'm going to take the motion as carried. The next item on the agenda, which I skipped over, was EGRO 10, which is timing of section 711s and 712 payments in your addendum booklet.
Thanks, Meg. I've got a couple of questions, if I can.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, and I apologise, I only saw the report earlier once this meeting started. So just a couple of questions. I note the points in there in relation to the subdivision deferrals, and they're not possible, so I accept that. Thanks for that. In relation to the drainage, though, bonds and whatnot, the report talks about drainage bonds. Are we looking at deferring those, or are they staying as is? Or the guarantee for the drainage works and a few other things.
Mr. Moore, can you speak to that detail?
Yes, through the CEO, Councillor, we weren't looking at making any change to the requirements for the payment of those bonds.
Okay, and that's good, yeah. Okay, beautiful.
Okay, yep.
And I take it this will now go on exhibition. At the end of the day, it comes back. If there's no issues, CEO signs off on it. And from that time period, they can apply should they choose for the deferral.
Correct.
Yes, yep. Councillor, and through the CEO, I can report that we've got those plans ready to go on exhibition tomorrow, I think. So we'll get through that exhibition period as quickly as possible.
I'll move the motion. Thanks, Mayor, if I can.
Thank you, Councillor Chitty. Have you got a seconder for the motion?
Seconded, Councillor Huddy.
Thank you, Councillor Did. Is there any opposition? I'll put it as being carried. The next item is Nomo 2 on page 429 in the name of Councillor Ayad. We've lost her. One of the children have disconnected the computer.
Yeah, I'm
there she is.
Sorry, can I just quickly reread this? Thanks. Okay, now, Madam Mayor, with regard to the motion that Councillor Rhodes had put before us earlier, where does this leave my motion? Because I feel like they've overlapped.
They have, and it's taken precedent over your particular motion. So I would suggest yours now lapses because it's already been done earlier in the council meeting.
Yeah. Okay, can we just have clarified that what I have here in number 1 is going to be covered or included in the report that's going to come back to us in May?
Okay, and ask the CEO.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, we'll include this particular parcel of land as one of the potential options, and obviously the constraint on it is the need to do a planning proposal. So we'll bring that forward as well.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So do you want to withdraw that, Councillor?
Well, I mean, can we have a vote on it? That's why I asked, where does this leave?
Okay, well,
considering that it's
you're moving it. Have we got a seconder?
Can I suggest, Councillor, I'm happy to second Councillor Ayard's if she changes it to defer this to the next council meeting to be discussed as part of the animal shelter location report, whatever it's called.
Yep. Okay, Madam Mayor, I'd be happy with that.
Okay, no worries. Yep. Is there any opposition?
You need a seconder.
You've got a seconder, Councillor Ayad moved it, and I thought.
I'll second.
Oh yeah, Councillor Did's moving. I had Chitty down as seconding, but anyway. Okay, Councillor Hadid second. No opposition. I'll put it. I declare it carried. Next item's on page 431.
431.
In the name of Councillor Rhodes.
Yes, now, my main concern about this, Madam Mayor, was the fact that, it's such a fast-moving world that we live in at the moment, with the government, making decisions on a daily basis, and the Economic Development Committee meetings are some way of councils being able to put in what they feel. The more people that we have thinking about what we can do to improve the economic outcomes for Liverpool as we come out of the COVID situation, or are still in it, it's a bit dubious as to where we actually stand half the time. But look, I've got a motion. I have listened to what everybody has been saying about this, and the motion comes up that if we could include in the monthly briefing meeting agenda a report to address the actions taken by council to address the economic challenges as a result of the COVID pandemic, and include the results of the actions taken by council to address the economic challenges as a result of the COVID pandemic. Yep. So we've got actions and results, and it gives councillors the opportunity, and I'm sure that they will come up with ideas that of other possible actions that might be able to be taken to get us out of this hard and most unusual situation that we're in. So I would like to propose that motion.
Okay.
And I think that would probably be able to handle things. It's not going to be absolutely fantastic because we just make a decision and then the government goes around and they start addressing it from a different angle that should have really been considered before we made the first decisions. But I would like to try this and see how this works out for us.
I'll second it, and I've got a question, Mayor.
Thank you. What's your question, Councillor?
Through to the CEO, without crossing the line of operational and what we can do as a councillor, but I ask this from a resident point of view. What measures is council putting into place to actually reopen?
That's a really good question, and you can certainly ask that. We've convened a working group of senior staff to look at the process of reopening the organisation. There are a number of steps in that. At the moment, we cannot reopen some centres like the libraries, the aquatic centres and so on. We'll have to be guided by New South Wales Health in relation to that. You may be aware that I have been lobbying to reopen libraries to in a socially distanced sense. I think that that's a broader social good. In relation to council operations, they are generally continuing, but they were continuing with a lot of the professional services staff working from home. As we are able to, as the restrictions start being lifted, we will try and bring more staff back into the workplace in that sense. We're doing it guided by, firstly, what are the health requirements, so that's a combination of people's physical health, protecting them obviously from COVID, and also mental health as well. It's not ideal to have a distance workforce. And then the second principle, of course, is how we can maintain productivity throughout this environment. So until we've got guidance from New South Wales Health about opening the public-facing services, we won't do that. Obviously, we're not going to breach direction from Office of Local Government and the Ministry for Health. When they do detail us able to open that, we will open that. Is there any specific question you have?
Yeah. So just a question, and you referred to New South Wales Health, for example. Did they direct us to close down the customer service centre?
No, we chose to close down the customer service centre on a risk basis. We are now looking at reopening the customer service centre with plexiglassing to try and manage risk. So some of it is risk based, some of it I just can't open the libraries. Customer service we could open, but not without some provisions in place for WHS requirements.
Can we, sorry, through you, Mayor, can we investigate when it comes to libraries? And I note your comments somewhere that the internet's an important facility that we provide.
Yeah,
I think could have been Bankstown or some other council that have got actually a booking service where people can actually book and go into the library and use the internet.
I've asked Dr. Jackson to look into that. Yes, so we'll come back to you about that one too, Councillor, because I agree we should be doing that if we can.
I totally understand the health factor, protecting our staff and everything else, but I also look at the need to try to get back to normality, and I'm sure it's driving a lot of people crazy being at home, me included. And if there's a safe way that we can get people back, obviously a safe way, and there are other things other councils are doing, i.e. library booking, going in and giving the services that those residents need that they're not getting at the moment, can we please look into those things and try to, as much as and as safe as possible, get most of our services up running again?
Yep, absolutely.
Madam Mayor, I also have a question in regards to measures for reopening.
Yes, Councillor.
Where there is, I guess, vagueness or conflict between advice from federal and state governments, what is going to be our course of action?
Look, my primary guide would be Office of Local Government, so state government. That is who we have our primary relationship with, and I think it's the state that has interfaced with us in terms of what our services are and our relationship. Obviously, there may be times where we have to make a slightly different decision, but broadly, the organisation has chosen to, which I believe is the right thing to do, be guided by OLG and Local Government New South Wales in terms of our responses.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I've got a question as well.
Yes, Councillor Haggerty.
Would it be too onerous to have a sort of standing item in the CEO's report for each week? So a paragraph or two on basically addressing that each week.
Yeah.
And then just, I guess, collate all that monthly and give it at the monthly meeting.
It wouldn't be too onerous at all. We can certainly do that.
Okay. So do I need to add that into the agenda? Or?
No, Councillor, I can just take that on board.
Thank you.
Fine. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, well, you have the motion before you.
Before you put it to a vote, Madam Mayor, could I just say I'm more than happy with the amount of information council staff have already been providing in relation to briefings and in relation to updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shelton, and I have to agree with you, and we're trying not to stress the staff out. We would like to work with them. Obviously, it's a team effort. Thank you. Anybody opposing this motion? I put it. Those in favour, those against, carried. Next items are confidential items. Could you look at the list in your book, and if there's anything there you wish to go into closed session about, please tell me now, because we have one item. The rest we can deal with without going into closed session. So the first item is on page...
Conf 5.
Confo 5, you want to go into closed session? Yep.
So 03, 05, and 07.
07.
And
yep.
all as a precautionary matter, just in case we slip up.
Sorry, what was that last part?
Just to be very cautious.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll proceed with Confo 1 and the recommendations on page 2090, which looks like a date.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I moved that.
Moving.
Seconded.
Any opposition?
No.
I'll declare it carried. The second item is Confo 2.
I'll move that way, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Shelton, Councillor Calienda. Any opposition? Declare it carried. Now, Confo 3, I think. Yep. Confo 4, which is on page 2118.
Yeah, go for it.
Councillor, who was that? Councillor Hall, wasn't it?
Yes, guys.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Seconded.
Councillor Carnib.
Thank you, Councillor Carnib. No opposition?
Yes, I'm opposing that, Madam Mayor.
Right.
I do not agree with the...
Okay, that's fine. You're allowed to oppose, Councillor. Any other people opposing?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, can I just clarify if we're on Confo 3 or Confo 4?
Confo 4.
Confo 4. No, I'm quite happy with that. Sorry about that.
Yep. Okay, so that's Confo 4. So we have a mover and a seconder for Confo 4. No objections. I'll put it. Declare it carried. Next item is on Conf 06, which is on page 2130.
06.
I'll move that way, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
I second it.
Thank you, Councillor Carnib. Any opposition?
No, just say that I'm not voting for that particular one.
Well, if you don't vote, you're voting against it, Councillor?
Yes.
Okay,
I'm voting
thank
against
you.
it.
All right, so Councillor Road voting against Conf 6.
Same
other-
with me, Councillor, Madam Mayor. I do too. Councillor Hall.
Councillor Hall's voting against Conf 06 as well. Anybody else voting against it? Okay, everybody else is voting for. This one has to be listed for the typist. Okay, so these are the items that have been dealt with under confidential. Now we'll moving into confidential. Remover. Okay, we're in business. Thank you, guys. Remove the small tree located on council land in front of 10 Whelan Avenue, Chipping Norton right side. Trim the larger tree. Well, it wasn't too far off. Larger tree located on council's land in front of 10 Whelan Avenue, Chipping Norton left-hand side, so that no branches over the side backyard. That motion was moved and adopted. The next one was Confo 3. Confo 3 is reject the current offer provided by Moorebank Sports Club, approve the development of a master plan for Hammondville Park to enable the creation of a leisure precinct, direct the CEO to provide sufficient funds for the proposed master plan works in 2021 financial budget, seek state government funding support for the creation of a commuter car park at Hammondville Park to support the demand for the Holsworthy station, seek state government support for the creation of more frequent bus services to the Holsworthy train station via Hammondville Park, notes the Moorebank Sports Club is a major stakeholder in this precinct, work constructively with the Moorebank Sports Club on the development of the master plan for the Hammondville Park and undertake community consultation. That was also adopted. The legal affairs document, which is Confo 5, was resolved that council receives a notice report concerning the legal affairs of Liverpool City Council, and note that the date of the DA lodged for them is 13 attached to the confidential report to be corrected on to 23rd of October 2019. That was carried. And Confo 7, in the light of federal and state government opportunities, council expresses options to site for public benefit, and that was also adopted unanimously by the council. Being there was no other business, the meeting subsequently closed at 9:09. And I'd like to thank everybody for coming this evening virtually, and please stay safe and well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everyone.
Good.